Alrighty, back to the B44.2, page 11. Going to be working with bag H and bag HH, which is the bulkheads, the center bulkheads that the slipper assembly rides in. The blue anodized aluminum bulkhead that the motor mounts on goes on here like this, with the U-shape towards the center. In the middle, you're going to need this short 440 and a longer 440. Comes in the bag. Be a 3/8, and this one is a what is this one? It is a 1/4 inch. So you're going to need a couple of 3/8, or I'm sorry, 1 3/8 and 1 1/4 inch. And then we're going to have the plastic bulkhead that's going to go right here. It's going to take 2 3/8 440s flanged. So I'm going to put those on there real quick. On the aluminum one, you're going to want to use a little bit of blue Loctite. So we'll just put a little drop there. I find that to be about the easiest way to do it. And you're going to want to just snug them up. You're not going to want to crank them too tight. If you over tighten them, if you ever have to pull that bulkhead for any reason, you sometimes will have to take a Dremel and you strip out that hex on there, that hex head on there, and you'll have to take a Dremel cut-off wheel and cut a little groove in it for a screwdriver. Another good thing whenever you go to loosen anything on these aluminum parts like this is just take your soldering iron and just heat it up, and a lot of times it will make it a lot easier to break it loose. But snug her up. Every once in a while you might want to check and make sure it stays tight. Just because it's got Loctite on it don't mean it's going to stay tight, but it does help. Something about aluminum parts that tend to want to vibrate loose. Get this here. It's pretty much a brain dead procedure right here, but just for the point of doing it and just so you can see how it goes, we'll just go ahead and do it. Won't take too long. Put a few screws in. Okay, get them snugged up pretty good. You want to keep them snugged up as well throughout the course of running it. Over the weeks it'll loosen up on you a little bit. Now you're going to have your eccentrics, your what this does right here is this is going to mount on your motor, and it's going to slide right in here, just like so. This flat piece is going to be up against the motor, and it's going to be just like this, and that's how you're going to set the mesh on your pinion gear and your motor and your spur. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop that in there so I don't lose it. I found that by going ahead and just dropping it in there until I'm done with building it, it tends to doesn't get lost. Every once in a while I'll misplace that stuff, and then I gotta hunt it down, so I like to just go ahead and put this like that. That way I know where it's at later on when I'm ready to put my motor in, and I don't got a bunch of stuff floating around in a box somewhere or in a bag waiting to get used. I use a little Loctite on these when I put my motor in. Then you got these little set screws here. Some guys use them, some guys don't. I like to use mine. A little extra set screw when it comes time to pinch that motor down. This they call it a motor cam, but it's also an eccentric. It's off round, so whenever you turn it, it moves the motor at a unround motion and moves it further and closer to the spur. But I use this. I put a little tiny bit of Loctite on it, and I use it to cinch down against the camber, the motor camber or eccentric, to keep the motor in place. A little extra. And these two little screws right here, you just got to stash them someplace. Like I got a little, well, I'm using my empty motor spray lid for that little extra stuff like that. Those are your screws to hold the camber, the motor cam, I should say, onto the motor. And I use a little Loctite on those too when I put the motor in. So, we got that. Now, we can go ahead and put our slipper assembly in. Just like so. Just kind of line all the ends up real good. And that's all there is to that step. One little step right there, and it's moving pretty free. It's a little tight because the gearboxes are new and everything, but that's one of the rounder spurs I've seen. It's not wobbling real bad. Looks pretty good. Nothing to it. And that's your stock slipper. Nice little setup there. But I'm gonna swap that. I just did all this part right here so you guys could see the stock build. It works great. You can run a 5.5, a 4.5. You can run any motor you want with that setup right there. It works good. You can run a lot of slipper or a little slipper or real tight. It lasts. You're still going to want to maintenance it. Well, probably about as much as you ever would, about every 3 or 4 weeks. You want to kind of take it all apart and make sure it's freshly scuffed up and clean, and it ain't getting too much glaze on it, because you don't want it to start slipping it on a TQ run or on a main win. You'll be on it never fails. It's always when it's down to that most important race. So now I'm going to swap mine out for this one here I modified, and I'll probably do a breakdown of this before I finish the build while it's fresh, but I'm going to run 5 pads on this kit. I just want to see how it does. This is a J Concepts spur gear, and everyone I've seen posts that they don't work. And that one's a little out of round, a little wobbly, but we're going to find out if it works or not. I may want to pull this off and run this one, because the one that came stock with the box seems to be a little bit less wobbly, if you can imagine that. And that's about a $10 spur gear right there. I think these are just a couple bucks, and it's actually straighter than this one. But I like the vent holes in it. I want to utilize the vent holes. So, here's page 11, step 1 of the bulkhead mounts. And that's all there is to that. And we will be back with the front top deck build here in just a few minutes. We'll see you in a bit.